After a not-so-thrilling but satisfying road playoff win in Cincinnati, the Pittsburgh Steelers moved on to the Divisional Round where they faced off against the Indianapolis Colts. And if you recall, in that 2005 season, the Indianapolis Colts were 13-0 to start off their year. They ended up 14-2, but along those first 13 games, there was a Monday night game in Indianapolis where the Steelers visited the Colts. And right out of the gate, if you thought maybe the Steelers would be able to hang with this high-powered offense led by, of course, Peyton Manning, then we were sadly mistaken. Because on the very first play of the game, we saw Peyton Manning drop back and throw a bomb down the sideline where I think Ike Taylor is still torched on the old RCA Dome turf. I understand the stadium's been knocked down, but maybe it's a parking lot street, who knows. But next thing you know, 7-0 before you could even blink. And the Colts were dominant that night where the Steelers didn't even have an answer in losing 26-7. So now knowing that we had beaten the Bengals, well, you know what I mean. Knowing that the Steelers had beaten the Bengals and with the Colts on the horizon, of course, as a fan, I was a little bit reticent to think that, we're going to go in there and match plays, strength, power, wit, whatever it may be, in order to at least be in this game in the fourth quarter. Of course, as all of the heartache that I displayed in the first video, talking about the playoff losses, the championship game losses, and again, just too much heartache between the last Steeler Super Bowl victory back in 1980 up until this point, I thought to myself, listen, we have a shot, right? I was trying to remain optimistic, and it certainly didn't add any more levels of bravado on my end when Joey Porter during the week came out and said that the Indianapolis Colts were soft. Now, I don't know if that was a Jedi mind trick to try to get the Colts off their game, because we all know the Colts were a finesse team. They were not a physical team. They were not a team that was going to punish you at the line of scrimmage or power through a game. If Peyton Manning was dressed in a tuxedo and was playing without any dirt or without the elements, because remember, the 2 years prior, he lost games in Foxborough with the muck and the snow and the mud where he was unable to get out of those games alive. But considering that this game was in their building and the fast track and they beat us on that Monday night in late November, let me say, I was not the most positive when it came to this Steeler team going in there and trying to upset the Colts. But you know what? That's why you're a fan. You just hope that you can stay in the game, maybe fourth quarter, hang around, or maybe be down by a score, tie the game, and then somehow, some way, kick a game-winning field goal and get out of Dodge and move on to the next round. Well, that wasn't the formula early on for the Steelers because they were very aggressive. Ben came out throwing deep passes to Heath Miller, getting the ball down the field, getting to the point where on the opening drive, they scored a touchdown. You're thinking, whoa, wait, I was not expecting this. And then to follow that up on their second drive, they had another touchdown where Ben squeezed the ball to Heath Miller. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Am I watching a different game? Is that really the Colts team that's representing there on the other side of the field? It sure was, because the Steelers jumped out on them to a 14-0 lead. But prior to that, as I was getting ready for the game, because if you recall, last week I got a big, giant surprise. My dad came down, visited me, put the hands over my eyes, wondering, what the hell's that? And I couldn't believe it. My dad showed up so we could watch this Steeler-Bengal game. And remember, if you watch that video, I didn't know whether or not he was going to show up the following week to see if he were to continue this Steeler gravy train of trying to get through not only the wild card round, but maybe even the divisional round. And sure enough, right before game time, guess what? Not only did he show up, but he showed up with my younger brother, Ruben, and also a friend. I forgot who it was off the top of my head. It may have been my dad's longtime friend, Rick. But now we had a little bit of a contingent. Not only did I have my guys there, and I didn't shout them out in the first video, so my apologies to them, whether that be George G Money Risk, Walt Holler, hope I'm pronouncing that name right. My guy Clarence, I don't know where you are, Clarence, but listen, you're always in my thoughts, and I just hope that you're okay wherever you may be. And amongst a throng of Steeler fans that were there, and here it was, jumping out to a 14-0 lead from the start, I'm thinking, no, this can't be too easy, can it? Well, for whatever the reason, the game plan of the Steelers was certainly, especially on the defensive side, was to hold that defense onto the sideline. And for whatever the reason, they weren't able to muster up much, especially for the first 3 quarters of the game. Only a field goal by Mike Vanderjagt, and he's going to play a big part in this later on. The Steelers not only had a 14-3 lead, but actually a 21-3 lead going into the fourth quarter. You're thinking, wait a second. Is the other shoe going to drop? Is my heart going to take another beatdown, another game where the Colts are going to come back and somehow, some way win, and then I'm going to have to walk out of Blondie's with my head hung low and just have to really question my beliefs and even my fandom to think that can I root for this team moving forward after this game if they happen to lose? Well, as it gets in the fourth quarter, the Colts did score. They made it 21-10, and then they get the ball back. And sure enough, they get that much closer. And they also added a 2-point conversion to make it 21-18. And now I'm thinking to myself, how are we going to get out of this game? And I don't know if my heart can take it. But then it looked like there was going to be the break of all breaks, because throughout this fourth quarter, you had a situation where the Steelers looked like they had an interception with about 5 minutes to go, where Troy Polamalu at midfield looked like he was able to corral a pass that was about to hit the RCA Dome turf, but I thought he scooped it up. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the break we needed. Hopefully somehow, some way, we could just move the chains, get first downs, and get out of Dodge with this victory. But as it was, Pete Morelli was the referee of that. And I love the NFL films even afterwards, where the coach at the time, Bill Cowher, he came out and told his troops,
that's just play. No matter what happens, regardless of what happens, we move on and we play.
And sure enough, it was not an interception. The Colts were able to get the ball, and I believe it was on that drive where they made it 21-18 and tacked on the 2-point conversion. I got to go back and get my sequences right. So now here it is. It's 21-18. Steelers have the ball. They didn't do anything with it. I believe they got 1 first down, but then 3 and out and had to punt the ball. But luckily for us, the ball was deep in Colt territory. So they had to go the length of the field, well, maybe not 2/3 of the field, in order for them to set up for which would be a game-tying field goal. But as it was, that's when the Steelers defense turned it up, to the point where they didn't sack Peyton Manning once, they sacked him twice. And guess who's in the middle of all this? That's right, none other than Peasy, Joey Porter. As he, on that 4th down, where I believe he and James Farrier went in and sandwiched Peyton Manning right there at the shadow of the goal line, and with about, I forgot how much time was left, man. I think it was less than 2 minutes, maybe it was 1:51, it was after the 2-minute warning, I believe. And next thing you know, we're ready to exalt. Us Steeler fans in the bar, my dad, we're high-fiving, we're going crazy, we're thinking the game is over. And just so happened, with the ball there, I guess around the 3-yard line and a little bit less than 2 minutes ago, I mean, how could you not think this was a victory? Now, to me, they had to get a touchdown. A field goal would have not have cut it, because it would have been 24-18, and we all know that Peyton Manning could go down the length of the field and punch it in the end zone, and that would have been just the ultimate. I mean, how do you come back from that as a fan if that were to be the case? That's why, to me, we needed 6. There I go with the we again. The Steelers needed 6. So now you had a situation where 1st and goal, figure you give it to our guy, the bus. Of course, the wheels turn around, and the bus, you know the whole song. So now we have a situation where Jerome Bettis looking to get his team on a flight to Denver the following week to play in an AFC Championship game. But something happened along the way. Something that you couldn't even make up if you were writing a Hollywood script. And it just so happened right there, as it was ready to go for pay dirt, this took place. As Bettis is trying to find a hole to get into the end zone, all of a sudden the ball goes pop up in the air as if it sprung out of a jack-in-the-box. And the next thing you know, it's getting picked up by Nick Harper. This is the same Nick Harper who got stabbed, I believe, in the knee by his fiance because of some accusation or who knows what, some off-the-field incident. And therefore, although hampered, and he certainly didn't look hampered on the run back, because here he is now as he gets the ball out of the air, and now he's trying to sprint to the other side of the field to try to get to the end zone. And then now I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to run this back. You talk about the ultimate swift kick to the groin. This is it. The good Lord, just take me now. I cannot suffer through another Steeler loss, as I'm literally watching this season go right up in smoke. But there happened to be one player back. One. And to this day, I believe it's called the Immaculate Redemption? The Immaculate... I can't recall at this very moment. But none other than the quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. Between Nick Harper, and it looked like it was about to be 3 players that were going to follow him in order to block to get Harper into the end zone. But for whatever reason, Ben Roethlisberger was going back and he was trying to fight the angle. He was trying to make sure that he could get Harper to a point where he could slow down enough to maybe, just maybe, have any of the defenders or even himself grab an ankle, grab a leg, do something in order to stop him. And sure enough, as he tried to make a tackle and lunged and literally got the shoelace of Nick Harper, he fell to the ground. And next thing you know, a big sigh of relief came over the bar, me, my dad, brother, my closest friends, and wow, we have life. But it seemed pretty grim, only because now they have the ball near midfield. All we need to go is about 15, 20 yards to kick a game-winning field goal, and that would have been it. And I believe on that last drive, I remember Peyton Manning taking a shot. If I'm not mistaken, was it to Reggie Wayne? And sure enough, as he's going down the sideline, and it looked like Reggie Wayne was gonna have it and corral it. And again, here comes the swift kick to the you-know-where. And watching it and just thinking back on it 20 years ago, I tell you, it felt like I just watched the game a half hour ago. But Reggie Wayne was unable to corral it. And sure enough, the Steelers were just barely alive. And now came the moment that the Steeler fan was hoping this wouldn't have happened, considering that Jerome Bettis was literally inches from closing his game out. Now you have the kicker, Mike Vanderjagt, who's coming out, who has had a very good resume, made it to Pro Bowls, I believe maybe an All-Pro or two along the way. So now he gets ready to line up for what would have been a game-time field goal. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was from 48 yards, 49, somewhere around there. Now remember, it was in a dome, so the climate was controlled. No elements, rain, wind, snow, none of it. And you're thinking Vanderjagt has been a clutch kicker, a reliable kicker. And how can you not think if you're a Steeler fan, well, I guess this game's going into overtime, and this is prior to the overtime rules. So we know that whomever would have won the coin toss, let's just say it was the Colts, and they went down the field and they kicked the field goal. That was it. End of the game. Man, how many more scenarios can a Steeler fan take? Because how I look at it was, we could have lost right there at Jerome Bettis at the goal line. The pass there, Reggie Wayne, and now here it is with Mike Vanderjagt looking to tie the game with a field goal. But then, for whatever the reason, the football gods somewhere up above shined not only on the sideline for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but certainly where that ball was placed. And when it was placed, and obviously the right leg of Vanderjagt went through, for whatever the reason, it looked like it was heading to Chicago. It was so wide right that I tell you, thank goodness it was that, because if it was going to be one of those Scott Norwood, just barely wide right, who knows? I mean, I don't even have a pulse to this day. I probably would have to scrape me off the ceiling. But knowing that once it went off of his foot and it was just going in the trajectory where it was 9 miles wide, man, you talk about an emphatic sigh of relief. And that's what it was. Yes, we could have gone crazy, and we did go crazy. It was euphoric, but anything but celebratory, because we had to not only go through those moments, but pretty much that entire fourth quarter on pins and needles. Between the comeback, between the interception that wasn't, the fumble, the almost near touchdown pass, I mean, you name it. And thankfully, that field goal went wide right. And the Steelers lived to see another week. And as I looked to my dad, and we hugged it out, and we said to each other, man, did you believe what just happened here? I mean, that game had so many twists and turns, and it kind of brought me back to the AFC Championship game, which at that time was 10 years ago, when the Colts went into Pittsburgh, the old Three Rivers Stadium, and barely eked out a win there. If you recall, Aaron Bailey, the ball hitting the ground, as I talked about in the previous video. And now here it is 10 years later, although in the divisional playoff, we survive another matchup against the Colts in the postseason. So turning to my dad and even my boys, where we knew we were gonna come back, I said, Dad, you gotta come back next week. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. Maybe you're my good luck charm. Maybe by you coming the week before with the Bengal game and being there with my brother and his friend, there's no ifs, ands, buts, maybes about it. You must be here next Sunday. And as I said, my dad hasn't been the most reliable guy, but considering he was here now for 2 weeks straight, I mean, of course he's gonna be there for the championship game against the Broncos, right? Well, I tell you, that was a game that I certainly remember, and as I'm reliving it right now, oh man, I don't even know how I survived it, to be honest with you, considering all the other tough losses, etc. And it was certainly on the way to looking that way, but thankfully, it was one that we certainly look back on, and yes, I understand with a lot of relief, but certainly a lot of joy. Upsetting, beating the soft #1 seed 14-2 Indianapolis Colts. And talk about a team that had heartbreak over the years. Well, the Patriots did it to them 2 years prior. And now you can add the Steelers to that list. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you watching this video. And if you happen to miss part 1 of this series, a father's son and the Steelers Super Bowl 40 run, definitely check this out. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe. It will go a long way to increase the visibility of this channel with all the other channels that are out there, especially when it comes to sports. True sports talk, real sports talk, unlike any other. No clickbait, rage bait, fluff. You're not going to get any of that here. Until next time, on the flip.